Welcome to the October the 20th, 1986 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, where we bring you back memories of Grand Prairie of the past, bringing you up to date. And it is so exciting today as we begin our history tape number 27. We have as our guest two of the very famous Motley family, and that's M-O-T-L-E-Y, that have been in Grand Prairie and the Dallas County environs for many, many years. And we're delighted to welcome Mr. Gene Motley, the patriarch of the Motley family. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gene.
Thank you.
We're just so glad you've decided to come and be with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Lynn Motley, his one and only son, we're delighted to welcome you, young man, to the show.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's good to be here.
We know that you two are going to bring us many good things, and we are sad that Marie could not be here since she had to be at the hospital today with some eye problems. Maybe we can have her on the show later on with her lineage in the Darty group.
Right.
But we want to begin. Gene, we would like for you very much to look out into your camera right in the front and begin by telling us some of the beginnings of the Motley, the Nash, and the old family lineage that you have that came to Dallas County environs. Give us some dates and tell us some exciting things. And just look out and take a few minutes telling us about your past family.
Well, back in 1857, Zachariah Motley, my great-grandfather, lived in Allen County, Kentucky. And there were lots of people from Kentucky at that time moving to Texas and going west. So he ventured to come to Texas, and he rode a mule. He brought money and gold. The reason he rode that mule, he thought it would be less suspicious for people to rob him. He'd think that the man riding the mule wouldn't have any money. So he arrived in Dallas County, and he selected his home site, which is now the campus of Eastfield College on Highway 67, east of Dallas. And there is where he bought, I don't know how, no, this time I have the records of how many acres of land, 200 or 300 acres of land. Paid for it in gold. He stayed here for some time, and then he went back to Kentucky and got all of his property together. It took him about 3 years. And sold, and then he headed with a wagon train, pulled by auction, with his family. I believe 8 children. The youngest one 3 years old, which was my grandfather, R.P. Motley. He had 40 slaves, and they came with him. And behind the old home place, only where Eastfield College is now, there was kind of a street there, and on each side of this street were cabins and houses for these slaves. Then later on, when the war came and the slaves were freed, he had 2 that stayed with him until they died. The others were moved out in other parts of Dallas County. The 2 that stayed with him, he gave them 250 acres of land at north of Garland, over towards Rockwall. Many in the late 20s, the 1920s, those 2 were still living. One of them worked in the courthouse in Dallas. The other slaves diminished out into the community around Dallas County. And then he began freighting from Jefferson, Texas. That's where he made his most money, freighting. He freighted with oxen, hauled lumber, flour, dry goods, anything that people needed in Dallas County. He brought it from Jefferson and pulled that team of auctions. I don't know how many there were with auctions. My youngest brother, I originally had the chain of that lead auction, and I gave it to my youngest brother. It was hand forged. The links were 6 inches long, 3/4 of an inch in diameter, and it was 14 feet long. That was the lead auction team. He later started buying scrip land in Dallas County. And on to my right over here is a land grant from Sam Houston to him, for certificate of title to 320 acres of land, which would be the Elizabeth Gray survey. To the people of Grand Prairie, this Elizabeth Gray, who do not know the survey, it's just north of the, what's the name of that road out here?
Dickey Road?
Dickey Road.
Just north of Dickey Road?
Just north of Dickey Road, about 400, 300 feet from where this television station is now. Mm-hmm. He had 320 acres. He had 640 acres. He got that from Sam Houston. Then in 1889, Zachariah Motley had passed away, and his wife took over the estate.
And what was her name?
Her name was Mary Motley.
Mary Motley, all righty.
And she took over the estate, and then she started dividing the land up, 1889. And my grandfather, R.P. Motley, got 320 acres of this 640 acres of this land grant here. And that part of that land is part of the land. It had already been divided once between the children. They divided it again. And he got partly of the McKinney-Williams survey, which is adjacent on the north side of the Elizabeth Gray survey, which the land represents from down to down Southwest 3rd, Center Street, to the Thomas corner, then west about adjacent to the old Grand Prairie, original Grand Prairie, and then across the railroad tracks, then the west about 600 feet, then back Carrier Parkway to Dickey Road, and Dickey Road to the cemetery.
All right now, Mr. Motley, your father, R.P. Motley. Grandfather. Your grandfather, R.P. Motley, was married to whom, and how many children did they have? And in that lineage, we'd like to be sure that you include your father. Would you do that?
My grandfather Motley was R.P. Motley.
All righty.
And his wife's name was Sarah Emma.
And what
Motley
was her
Lawrence.
maiden?
She was a Lawrence.
She was a Lawrence, all right.
She was born and raised in Mesquite, Texas.
All right.
They had 8 children.
Okay.
4 boys and 4 girls.
And your father was one of those?
My father was the oldest,
Mm-hmm.
John Motley, John S. Motley.
All right. And John S. Motley, your father, married whom, giving the maiden name?
My father married Eliza Nash from Garland, Texas.
All right.
Her father, Leif Nash, was in the Civil War. And I have a letter here
Okay.
that it's so dim, it's a photostatic copy of the original, that I can't read it, but it's real interesting to read. I might ask my son to read some of this. I think he can.
All right, let's let Lynn read a little bit of this, of the letter from Thomas Jefferson Nash, who was a community judge here in the Dallas area, and this is a letter he wrote to Lafayette Nash during the Civil War. Is that right, Lynn?
Back east.
All right.
That's correct, Ruthie. This letter was written during the Civil War, It begins by saying, "At home, Dallas County, Texas, January 3rd, 1862." And the letter goes on to describe the various conditions that existed in Dallas County during the early part of the winter of 1862. Just some examples here. I'll read from the letter itself. It says, quote, "We have had so far the warmest and driest winter I have ever seen. It has not rained enough to start the creeks to running yet, and yet the ground remains slightly wet, and the consequences are not yet known." It goes on to say that the dry weather has caused a great number of the wheat fields to be suffering. It goes on to describe the other conditions in Dallas County. It even discusses at the end of the letter about the fact that the southern ports have been blockaded by northern ships of war. And so what it does do is point out to the fact that people even here in Dallas County during the Civil War were aware of what was going on and
very affected by
it, and were concerned about the war as it was progressing at that time. It makes reference to then President Abraham Lincoln in the letter by discussing him as, quote, "Old Abe." And so it points out, I think, what we all know, and that is that families forever have had concerns about their loved ones when they're in war. This letter is just a very good example of that from the Civil War.
That's wonderful. Now, Gene Motley, I'd like for you to tell, you've told us your father's name and your mother's name. Now we need to know how many brothers and sisters you had and how you fell in that lineage.
Well, in our family there were 4 boys and 4 girls.
All right.
The oldest girl is Mrs. Emma Grantham. She lives in Garland, Texas.
All right.
The next one is my brother Charlie Motley, C.R. Motley. He lives in Cago, which used to be old Reinhardt, Texas,
All right.
on Loop 12. The next was a girl, my sister, Mrs. Fay Tritch. She lives in Garland.
Okay.
The next in line was Ressie Isaac, my other sister. She lives in Garland. The next in line would be myself, and I've lived here in Grand Prairie. The next in line would be 2 twins, Emmy and Mildred Motley. They're one boy and 1 girl. One was named Emmy and one was named Mildred. And my youngest brother, Joe B. Motley, of Garland, Texas.
And that's the entire group. Now, I'd like to know which one of the Motleys that was referred to in all of the research that we've done on Old Southland Cemetery. That's very exciting because they said Grandma Motley gave the funds to be able to put the archway at the beginning or at the roadside there at the Old Southland Cemetery. Now, was that your grandmother?
Yes. She said one of her children, she had 4 boys and 4 girls, R.P. Motley, from my father's family. She had a son that was 23 years old, and he worked for the Katy Railroad, and he got sick on the train, and at that time the Texas and Pacific come through Grand Prairie. And he got sick. I don't know where it was, but anyhow, he got sick. So he come to Dallas on the other Katy Railroad. Then he caught the Southern Pacific and came to Grand Prairie and to T.H. Hall, Tom Hall, who lived here in Grand Prairie, who married his sister. Yeah. And just a day or so, he died with a heart attack. At that very time, my grandmother, Emma Motley, and R.P. Motley were starting a house over here on this 320 acres of land that R.P. Motley owned.
And where would that be located today?
Be on the corner of Motley and Southwest 3rd.
Is that the 567 on the corner of Southwest 3rd and Motley? The old home with the large veranda.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a beautiful old home.
Yeah, it was real cool there. Now, the reason the house south of the cemetery was started, this boy died while they were building this house. They had started it. And they had land hereby where the old Southland is on this side of it. But she couldn't sit on the front porch and see that tombstone. I have a picture somewhere that she could, I don't know where it's at, but she could sit on the front porch of that home and see that tombstone in Southland Cemetery. And
that was a comfort to her, wasn't it?
That was a comfort to her. Oh. It was originally started, I'm told, as a family cemetery, but in a few days, just 4 or 5 days, another old-timer here had died, and they wanted to be buried out there, so they decided they'd just open it up for the people. 2 weeks later, I think to the day, her daughter died with childbirth, and she too is buried in that cemetery. She's the one that has the big cross.
The big cross. All right, now, Mr. Motley, what did your grandfather and your father do for a living when they lived here in Grand Prairie? Were they farmers?
My grandfather didn't do anything. He had already retired.
All right.
But he had farms at Reinhardt, and farms on the Bodark Island, and farms here in Grand Prairie.
All right, how about your
father?
father?
My father worked this land right straight across from this TV station.
All right, and if he farmed it, what kind of crops did he grow?
Raised cotton. We had 3 gems in Grand Prairie at that time.
All right.
Raised cotton, corn, wheat, oats.
Did you have any animals?
Yes, that's all we had to work that crop with. Had mules.
Right.
Had 4 mules and 3 horses, 1 for a buggy, and the others for to raise colts.
All right. Now, growing up on the farm, did you help with the chores and do all of the good things?
I'd done just about everything that you do on a farm. I remember one time we had land, we had cows, but we didn't have any money. And my mother, we had a sweet potato patch just across from this TV station in that hollow right over there. And she sent me on a horse bareback over there. It was in the wintertime, just right after Christmas, to dig some sweet potatoes. We had sweet potatoes in there. And I got over on that horse, and I got off that horse easy. But after I got that sack of potatoes, I couldn't get back on that horse.
That was tough, wasn't it?
That was tough. Well, there was a fence line along just in front of this TV station, barbed wire fence. But I couldn't get up on a small post and get on that horse. So I had to walk. I was nearly freezing to death. I walked and led that horse. I tied that sack of potatoes to the highest post that I could get along that fence line. And I went way down that fence line, passed nearly down to that street is down, the next street is down here. It goes up to the bank. And there was a corner post down there, and I got on that corner post and got on that horse and come back and got them potatoes and got back home, but I was nearly froze to death, I tell you that.
Gene Motley, where did you go to school in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Well, I went to the only school there was when I went there was up where the administration building is now.
All right. Can you tell me who was the superintendent or the principal or some of your teachers?
I can tell you, Mr. Hudspeth.
Wonderful.
One of the finest teachers that I think Grand Prairie ever had. In them days, you didn't go to school and cut up and disturb the class. If you did, Mr. Hudspeth worked you over with a switch. And I mean, it was a pecan switch, and it hurt. And he was a great man and a great educator. But I never did like school. I liked the farm, work on the farm and such as that, so I didn't go any further than the 4th grade.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then you have been one of the most successful businessmen here in Grand Prairie,
Well,
in spite of all of this good
I
stuff.
worked, never was in business myself, but I worked for American Body Equipment Company for 45 years.
45 years.
I've just been away from there about 3 years.
All right, now what did you do with them?
Well, the last few years was public relations.
Oh, that's great.
The other years I worked in everything down there except the paint shop. I was foreman for 18 or 19 years of different departments. And it was an enjoyable place to work. It was close to home, and it didn't pay very much money, but it was
It was steady, wasn't it?
It was steady, and if you take in the time that would take you to drive to Dallas, I guess I made as much money as other people.
Certainly. All right, now, who was your favorite teacher in school and that inspired you the most of all of the teachers that you had?
Well, the one that I think the one that I loved the most and liked the most was Bertie Harston.
Bertie Harston.
Now, Bertie Harston's father owned a drugstore on Main Street down here, confectionery and drugstore. And Bertie Harston then later on married a man by the name of Jack Grantham. And I think all the Harstons are passed away now except Cone Harston, and I don't know where he lives.
Okay. Well, that gives us just a real good rundown of Gene Motley. Now, we've gotten you out of school and you're working on the farm or in the American Body Works. Tell me how you met that beautiful Marie Doherty that you made into a Motley.
Well, you're not going to believe this,
All right.
but I met her at a medicine show.
At a medicine show.
Sure did.
Wonderful.
I'll tell you where it was.
All
it
right.
was on the corner. It was on the corner on the, what is that street there with the Baptist Church?
Northeast 2nd Street.
All right, northeast corner, Northeast 2nd and Main Street. They had a medicine show there, and I went down there, and she was there, and I thought she was the prettiest thing I ever saw.
She's a beautiful, beautiful lady.
She was a beautiful one.
Yes, beautiful
Still
lady.
is.
Still is. And then you all married, and then
We married in 1933. 3 years ago, we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary.
Yes. That was
We've been married now 53 years.
And we celebrated that at Carlisle Smith and Weeder,
That's right.
Dorothy Smith's home,
That's
and that
right.
was very exciting, wasn't it?
It sure was. We had something over, people signed a book, I believe, how many?
350.
250 people.
350 people. That is wonderful. All right, and we brought us up to date now to where we've already celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. Let's let Lynn tell us a little bit about Grand Prairie, Texas, and his tenure, where he went to school and on to college and where he works. And then we're going to come back to you and ask you about old downtown Grand Prairie in just a minute. All right, Lynn, tell us a little bit about
thank you,
yourself.
Ruthie.
Mention your family, please.
Well, of course, Mother and Dad, I was born in the late 40s, right after the war was over, and a credit to my father is that, and I've been very lucky to have had an opportunity, as you know, in Grand Prairie to serve this town on the Board of Trustees, school district, and the wonderful thing about having wonderful parents is the fact that my mother and father always made education important. Education was important to them. They gave me the kind of desire to get a good education myself and to make sure that others did as well. And I have stated in the past publicly what a great debt of gratitude I owe to them, and I hope that by the service that I had with the school district here, that I was able to repay both them and this town for the wonderful education I got. I was fortunate enough to graduate from Grand Prairie High School and
What year?
in 64.
Wonderful.
And then I graduated with honors at the University of Texas in 68. And it's been a good career for me at LTV. I've worked
And
at
what
LTV.
is your field?
And I'm in contracts at LTV, subcontracts. I'm the manager of major subcontracts for the Missiles and Advanced Programs Division at LTV. and it's been a good career, and Grand Prairie has been a part of our family and a part of our life for many years. Dad's probably too modest to tell you, but the facts are that he has a long history of public service to this town. He has served this town in a number of capacities on city boards. He even now is a civil service commissioner and has been for quite a few years. And it's wonderful growing up in a family that makes education important, that makes public service important, because it is those kind of leadership qualities that you get from your family that I think tends to enrich your own life and give you an opportunity to enrich the lives of others. And it's just a pleasure to be a part of it.
And you would mention your wife's name and
My
anyone
wife?
else that's in your family that we have left out.
Well, of course, my wife, Tawny Chapman, and she grew up right around the corner from me.
Wonderful.
And we've been married a lot of years now, and we've all been a part of Grand Prairie. We've had opportunities to leave, but certainly this is a part of us. We grew up here. It's a part of our lives, and we've tried to do and continue to do everything we can to make Grand Prairie the really great city that it is.
Well, I certainly thank you for telling us all of that, Lynn. We've got to get back. We have 2 minutes left, and I've got to get back to Jean. Now, Jean, in old down Prairie, Texas, during the time that when you were growing up, what was the most exciting thing on the strip to you of Main Street or Jefferson?
Well, when I first can remember, most of the business was over on Jefferson.
All right.
It wasn't Hall Brothers run a grocery store there on the corner of where White's parking lot is now.
All right.
And then there was the city jail was right behind their store.
On Jefferson?
No,
Off of Jefferson?
It was on Center Street.
On the Center Street.
It was about 12 by 18. It was
All
made
right.
out of 2x4s and had rods run through those 2x4s all the way down to the bottom of it. Had a lock on it, the bar on it made out of a wagon tire.
All right, we have a half minute. I want to ask you, where was the old town hall? No one's been able to tell me where the first old town hall was located, and it was mentioned in a newspaper article.
I just
All right.
I just don't know.
All right, we'll put that in our computer then, won't we?
I just don't know where that old town hall was. I know who the first mayor was.
Yes, we have all that on record. That was Mr. Lively, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, our time has about run out.
Let me say one
All
thing
say
right
it.
quick.
All right.
To these young people, education is the greatest thing they are. I didn't get that education. I got most of the education that I got out of newspapers. I still today read everything in the newspaper from cover to cover. Morning news. Sometimes I take the Times Herald. And to these young people, I say to you, go to school and get your education. And you won't have to work like I did. Do hard work. You can work and do easy work like him.
I want to thank you all for being with us today. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Ruthie.
you all.
Pleasure to
Thank
be
you.
here.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do. Thank you all, gentlemen, for being with us today.